Oxford Bookworms Stage 1. Published by FLTRP. Copyright Oxford University Press, 2009.
书虫牛津英汉双语读物第1集，苏格兰玛丽女王。
Mary, Queen of Scots, by Tim Vickery. Read by Claire Willey. Chapter 1. Fotheringay. My name is Bess Curl, but this is not my story. It is the story of my Lady Mary, Queen of Scots. She wrote the story, and then she gave it to me. I am going to give it to her son. She began the story a week ago. It was January 1587, and we sat here in our cold room in Fotheringay Castle in the north of England. We couldn't see much from the window. 1 or 2 houses, a river, some trees, some horses, and a road. That's all. The road goes to London, the home of Queen Elizabeth of England. Mary sat with her little dog in her hands and watched it all day long. No one came along the road. Nothing happened. I watched Mary, unhappily. "Please, Your Majesty, come away from that window," I said. "It doesn't help. No one is going to come. Queen Elizabeth can't do it. Queens don't kill queens." "Don't they, Bess?" Mary said. "Then why are we here, in this prison? Why am I not free?" "Why, Your Majesty? Because Queen Elizabeth is afraid of you." "That's right," Mary said. "She's afraid of me, and she hates me too. She hates me because I am beautiful, and she is not. Because I had 3 husbands, and she never married. And because many people, good Catholic people in England, France, Scotland, Spain, say that I, Mary, am the true Queen of England, not Elizabeth. And Elizabeth has no children, so when she is dead, my son James—" She came away from the window and stood in front of me. "James," she said quietly, "my son. Does he think about me sometimes?" He was only 10 months old when I last saw him. It is nearly 20 years. "Of course he thinks about you, Your Majesty," I said. "You write to him often. How can he forget his mother?" "Then why doesn't he write to me?" Mary asked. "Does he want me to stay here in an English prison?" "No, of course not, Your Majesty. But he has a lot of work, Your Majesty. He is the King of Scotland, and he is not the King of Scotland, Bess," she said. "Not before I am dead. Remember that." "No, Your Majesty, of course not. But perhaps people tell him things that are untrue," You know what people say. Perhaps he thinks you killed his father." Mary's face went white. She was very angry, and for a minute I was afraid. She said, "You know that's a lie, Bess. It is a lie. I did not kill James's father. I knew nothing about it." "I know that, Your Majesty, but perhaps James doesn't know it. He hears so many lies all the time. He needs to know the true story. Why don't you write and tell him?" Mary sat down slowly. She looked old and tired. "All right, Bess," she said. "Give me a pen, please. I'm going to write to James and tell him the true story. You can give it to him when I'm dead." "Dead, Your Majesty? Don't say that. You aren't going to die." Her old, tired eyes looked at me. "Yes, I am, Bess. You know what is going to happen. One day soon, a man is going to bring a letter from Queen Elizabeth, and then her men are going to kill me. But before I die, I would like to write to my son, James. I want to tell him the story of my life. So give me a pen, please." I gave her a pen. This is what she wrote. Chapter 2. France. Dear James, very soon I am going to die and meet my God. Before I die, I want to write the true story of my life for you. Everything that I write here is true. I cannot lie to you or to God. Please believe that, James. It's important to me. My father died when I was 1 week old, so I was the Queen of Scots when I was a baby. At first, I lived with my mother in Scotland, and then, when I was 5, I went to France. My mother was French, but she stayed in Scotland and died there. I went to France to marry the King of France's son. His name was Francis, and he was 1 year younger than me. In 1559, his father died, so Francis was king. Then I was Queen of France and Queen of Scotland too. I was very happy in France. Francis, my husband, was like a little brother to me. I think he loved me, but he was very young, and he was often ill. And then, in 1560, he died. He was 16 years old. When he died, I was very unhappy, and my life was very different. there was a new king and queen, and I wasn't important in France anymore. But I was still Queen of Scots. So I came back to Scotland. When I arrived in Scotland, I was a young girl of 18. My mother was dead, and there was no one there to meet me. I walked off the ship, and I slept in a little house near the sea. Next day, the Scots lords came from Edinburgh. They were pleased to see me, and for a week everyone was happy. People smiled at me and sang in the streets. I think everyone liked me. Then, that Sunday, I went to church. James, my son, you are a Protestant, and I am a Catholic. You are a good man, and you love God, but your church and my church are enemies. I was born a Catholic, and I am going to die a Catholic. I love God too. I hope you understand that. I'm not going to change now. That Sunday, people shouted angrily in the streets. "Your Majesty," said the Scots lords, "Scotland is a Protestant country. You can't go to a Catholic church here. The Scottish people don't like Catholics." "I'm sorry, my lords," I said, "but I am your queen. No one tells me what to do. I don't hate Protestants, and I'm not going to kill them. The people can go to their Protestant churches and pray to God there. But I'm going to pray with Catholics in my church." People were angry because of that. A man called John Knox came to see me. He was a famous Protestant churchman, but I didn't like him. He was a big, angry man with black clothes. He hated the Catholic Church and wanted all Catholics to leave Scotland. To him, the Protestant Church was the only true Church of God. He said, "Your Majesty, you're a young woman like my daughter. Women can't understand difficult things like God or the Church. Find a good Protestant husband, girl. Let him rule this country for you." I was very angry with this man, Knox. I was a queen, but I was only 18. He didn't talk quietly. He shouted at me. I cried because of his angry words. I could not understand him. He talked so much, and he knew so many books. But I did not go to his church. He was right about one thing. Perhaps I could rule Scotland without a man, but I could not have a child without one. And every queen needs a son or daughter to come after her. So I began to look for a husband. Chapter 3. Darnley and Riccio. At first, I wanted to marry the son of the King of Spain, Don Carlos. But he was a Catholic, of course, and my Scots lords did not like that. It was difficult for me, James. I wanted to please myself. I wanted to please my friends and family in France, and to please my people too. And then there was the Queen of England. At first I wanted very much to be friends with Elizabeth. We wrote many letters and talked about a meeting between two sister queens. Elizabeth wrote to me at this time. Our two countries need to be friends. You need a husband. I need a friend. Why not marry my friend Robert Dudley, the Earl of Leicester? He is a tall, strong man. I think he could be a good husband for you. I was very angry about this letter. There were a lot of stories about Elizabeth and Robert Dudley. They were good friends. He often danced and sang and talked with her. Sometimes, people said, he stayed in her room all night. Dudley had a wife, but one day she died very suddenly. It was an accident. She fell down the stairs, they say. But then, perhaps she was unhappy because of her husband and Elizabeth. And she writes to me about a man like this, I thought. She wants him to marry me because he is her friend, her lover, perhaps. She wants her lover to be King of Scotland. I found a better man than Dudley, James. I found Henry Darnley, your father. He was 19 years old, and I was 23. He was a tall man, with a beautiful face and big green eyes. He talked and sang well, and I liked dancing with him. He often wore expensive black clothes, and he laughed a lot when he was with me. He was very young and friendly, and I felt happy when I was with him. I liked him very much, and I thought he loved me too. He was an important man too. We were cousins. His grandfather was King of Scots, and his great-grandfather was Henry VII of England. In July 1565, I married him. Elizabeth was very angry, and so were a lot of the Scots lords. My half-brother, the Earl of Moray, tried to stop the marriage. I had to fight him, and he ran south to England. But I was happy. Your father and I laughed every day. He was now Henry, King of Scots. After 1 or 2 weeks, the laughter stopped. A king has a lot of work, James. You know that. He has to read hundreds of letters, talk to people, and think about a lot of important things. I did those things every day. But now, I thought, I had a man to help me. My Lord Henry, I said, would you like to read all the letters with me? You can sit next to me, and you can work with me every day." Your father looked unhappy. "I'm not interested in work like that," he said. "I don't understand it." "Of course not," I said. "You're a young man, my love. But I can teach you." For 1 or 2 days, he sat down with me, and I tried to teach him. But it was true. He was not interested in the work, and he did not try to understand it. "You do it, Mary," he said. "I'm going out with my friends. We're going to ride and drink and swim." So I did all the work. At night, too, he often went out with his friends in the town. They drank a lot, and laughed and sang, and there were often fights. But no one said anything, because he was the king, my husband. What could people say? They were unhappy, but they were afraid of him. Some of them went to England, to the Earl of Moray. At this time, I was often very tired, because I was pregnant. You, my son James, were alive inside me. But I did all the work of a queen, and I needed friends too. One of these friends was a young Italian, David Riccio. Riccio was a little man, and he was not tall, or beautiful, or strong. But he was a very clever, interesting man. He wrote many of my letters for me, and helped me. He sang well, too, and I sometimes sang with him in the evenings. I liked him very much, and at first your father liked him too. But then Moray's friends began to talk about me and Riccio. "David Riccio is in the Queen's rooms every night," they said to your father. "She laughs and sings and dances with him. My lord, it is not right. He is not a Scotsman, and he is not her husband. He is always with her." Perhaps they said other things too. I don't know. A lot of Scots lords listened to them. But I tell you, James, before God, I did nothing wrong. David Riccio was a good man. He worked hard, and he helped me, so of course I liked him. Your father did not work. He went out to the town every night with his friends and drank. And then one night, your father came home.